Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our continuing study of the book of Isaiah. If you've been enjoying the lessons that Bill's been providing, where he does more of a topical overview, you're in for a disappointment, because you guys know me. I'm a verse by verse guy. So you're gonna have 5 weeks of hearing verse by verse exposition, at least. I don't know what Michael plans to do, but you got 5 weeks of that ahead of you. So let's, if you would, we'll ask David to have a prayer before we begin our study this morning.
Our Father, we're thankful for this day and for the opportunity now we can study together from your word. We pray this morning that you'll be with Kurt as he directs our class, that you'll help each of us listen so we can better understand your word. We would also pray for the ones that are not able to be out with us today because of illness. We pray that you'll help them feel better soon so they can come back with us. We pray now that you'll help us in our study this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, David. So just a real quick background that I wanted to catch us up with, because I know we got some folks in the auditorium now who've been teaching their own classes. Let them get caught up with us. So over the past several chapters of Isaiah, God's been revealing to them that Judah is going to be disciplined sometime in the future. And in this instance, it's going to be taken away in Babylonian captivity. Okay, but this is like still 200 years out. So God's giving them a lot of forewarning that this is coming. Okay, it's not just right before it happens. It tells them they're going to live in oppression for a period of time, specifically 70 years, and that God will, at the appointed time, guide someone whom he will call Cyrus to them, who will bring relief to the people and to Judah. And not only that, but he's going to punish the people that he will have used to discipline them. I think I want you to keep in mind those two different terms. He's going to punish versus discipline. Okay? Is this the first time that such a revelation has happened? You think so? I would point you back to Genesis 15, verses 13 through 16. Where he says, Then the Lord said to Abram, Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, you shall be buried in a good age, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So if we go back to the account in Genesis, God had foretold to Abram that his offspring would go through something similar. Theirs is going to be longer, 400 years, versus the 70 that Judah is about to face. But God told them in advance so that they would understand when the things happened that God knew about it, it was part of his plan, and that he was the one in control. Was God under any obligation to tell through Isaiah that this was going to happen to Judah? Of course not. He does so they too will understand, just like Abram and his descendants, that this is part of God's plan and God is the one in control. Things don't happen by accident to them. So this particular chapter, 47, we're going to be in today, turns to revealing the fate of Babylon. That is who God will use to discipline Judah in the future. And given that God will use Babylon for his own purposes, right, to discipline Judah, we might be wondering, well, why are they going to be punished? God is the one who is directing what is happening. Why should they be punished as a result of doing what, God's will here? So I want you to keep that in mind as we're going to get the answer to that question in verses 6, 9, 10, and 11 through 15 are going to tell us why God is going to punish Babylon. So if you don't mind, I'd like for us to just go ahead and read through this chapter, and then we'll come back and look at the details. So beginning in verse 1, he says, Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin, daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind flour, put off your veil, strip off your robe, uncover your legs, pass through the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered, and your disgrace shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will spare no one. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, is the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called the mistress of kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage. I gave them into your hand, and you showed them no mercy. On the aged you made your yoke exceedingly heavy. You said, I shall be mistress forever, so that you did not lay these things to heart or remember their end. Now for hear this, you lover of pleasures, who sit securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow or know the loss of children. These two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day. The loss of children and the widowhood shall come upon you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries and the great power of your enchantments. You felt secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray, and you said in your heart, I am. There is no one besides me. But evil shall come upon you, which you will not know how to charm away. Disaster shall fall upon you, for which you will not be able to atone. And ruin shall come upon you suddenly, of which you know nothing. Stand fast in your enchantments and your many sorceries with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you may be able to succeed. Perhaps you may inspire terror. You are wearied with your many counsels. Let them stand forth and save you. Those who divide the heavens, who gaze at the stars, who at the new moons make known what shall come upon you. Behold, they are like stubble, the fire consumes them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. No coal for warming oneself is this, no fire to sit beside. Such to you are those with whom you have labored, who you have done business with from your youth. They wander about each in his own direction, and there is no one to save you. So this is all a long judgment and explanation of what God is going to do to those who discipline Judah for him. So let's go back to verse 1. He says, come and sit down in the dust, and he refers to this virgin daughter of Babylon. So Babylon here is represented as a virgin daughter, something that would be desirable and sought after. And the idea is that it's desirable and sought after by the nations around it for a couple of reasons. In one hand, they conquer everyone. So if you can be friendly with them before they conquer you, maybe they'll just be your business partner. So the nations around them who haven't been conquered yet have an incentive to try to have good relations with them, right? So, but he says that you're going to be brought low, called to sit in the dust. We see numerous examples in the Old Testament, do we not, of people who sit in the dust, put on sackcloth, maybe put dust or ashes on their head. And what is that a sign of? What's that supposed to be a sign of? Mourning, yeah. He says, basically, so that's what he's calling out here. You're going to be the one in mourning. You're used to being on the other side of this. You dominate everyone that you encounter, and they're the ones who are in mourning while you are taking advantage of them. It's your turn to be on that side where you're in mourning. All of Babylon's going to be in mourning when they go from being the pinnacle of power to being the conquered and subjected. That's the idea of without a throne. Up until this point in time when this vengeance will come, Babylon's going to be this great power. They have the throne. They control much of the known world, And in an instant, it's all going to change, and they're going to be the ones who are under someone else's control. Again, I pointed out when we started, these events aren't going to occur for nearly 200 years, but God is making known his plan so that his children will recognize when these events occur, this was God's plan. Verse 2, he tells them, take the millstone and grind flour. He tells them to put off their veil, to strip off your robe, uncover your legs, and pass through the rivers. These are all things that would have been an embarrassment to someone of the stature that Babylon considers themselves at this time. Okay? The imagery here is that the position of power and control that they've had is going to be replaced by one of servitude. They're going to be in service to other people when they've been so used to everyone they've been conquering being in service to them. Just as Babylon is going to oppress those whom they take, whom they conquer, that's going to include Judah, and actually by an extension it's going to include Israel, because Babylon eventually conquers Assyria, who had taken Israel. So therefore the people who are displaced from Israel by Assyria are under Babylonian control by this time as well. These people of Babylon are going to be put into hard labor in service of those who conquer them. In this case, it's going to be the Medes and or Persians, depending on which terminology you look at. So these people who are so we have people who are used to working for a living. So think about it, at the time that Babylon will conquer Judah, yes, there are nobles and things like that that get taken away, but to a large extent, the people they're taking away are the common working people, right? So they're used to working for a living, whether it be farming or whether it be tending animals, things like that. It's a burden for them what Babylon does to them, the work that they make them do, and these are people who are accustomed to working, right? So think of it on the other hand, saying, it's going to be really terrible for you, Babylon, because you're used to the easy life. You don't really have any calluses on your hands. Your back's not used to bending and lifting or working a plow or any of those things. And suddenly that's what you're going to have to do. And, so the point here is it's going to be even worse for you than the countries around you that you capture as the future unfolds, because at least they're accustomed to doing work. You're used to just having the easy life. It's going to be a lot harder for you. So the idea is no more giving orders to others. They're going to be the ones taking the orders. The idea of putting off their veil. So I had to read several commentaries to get what I felt was a reasonable interpretation of this. If you're working hard in the field and you're a person who's accustomed to a life of luxury, you might have a tendency to leave on your nice clothes and headbands and things like that. And one of the commentators suggested that the idea here is you've been able to do these things in the past because you've had this easy life. Now when you realize that you're hot and you're sweaty, you're going to take this stuff off because it just makes it feel worse, right? So like all those things you used to adorn yourself with and you felt so great about, you're going to be anxious to get rid of them because they're going to be a hindrance to you. They will strip off their robes and uncover their legs. Again, you can read a lot of different interpretations by commentators what they think this means. So one of the ones I took from it that I thought was an interesting take was that during their reign, think about it, they're probably used to being carried around. Think of I'm not saying this is the case for the Ethiopian eunuch, but think of the eunuch we encounter in the New Testament, right? He's riding on something that's either being drawn or carried by someone else, right? And what happens when you get to a river you have to cross? Do you think the eunuch gets out and walks across the river? No, they carry him across the river. He's not getting wet, right? Well, the Babylonians are kind of in this same boat, right? They're used to luxury. They have a lot of servants who probably make sure they never have to do things like put their foot in a mud puddle, right? Or step in a river or a stream. They get carried across. And instead, not only are you not going to get carried across, you're going to be the one tasked with carrying someone else across. So guess what you're going to have to do? Well, do you want to wade into the river with your robe on, your clothes on that come down to nearly your ankles? Of course not. I'd be afraid of getting weighed down and swept away, right? So you're going to take that off. You're going to uncover your legs. Again, you don't want clothes getting you wet, weighing you down, taking you away. And you're going to cross this river carrying someone. Something that's completely a foreign idea to them. All right. That's 2 verses. You have any questions or comments? Yeah. Let's see. Okay, we're doing all right. I was a little worried about this. There's only 15 verses to this whole chapter. So, 45 minutes on just 15 verses. Had to do a lot of research to find enough information to make this a nearly 45-minute class, right? Maybe if I read it 3 or 4 more times, we can fill in some time. All right, verse 3 says, "Your nakedness shall be uncovered, and your disgrace shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will spare no one." So this is kind of a continuation of the previous verse. I meant to look and see. I don't see him here today. Okay. Someone who loves Webster. So I actually wanted to go to a different translation and tell you a different translation out of this one because there's slightly different wording here. So I'm going to use Webster. "Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yes, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance." And here's the key part I wanted to catch. So in this translation, it says, "I will not meet thee as a man." So the other translation, again, you find what you like to read and work with. The other translation I really appreciate is Young's literal translation. One of the reasons being he doesn't try to interpret what's meant when he does the translation. He just takes the original language and translates it into English. Sometimes the sentences don't make a whole lot of sense in terms of, words seem really out of place to us, but that's his point. I'm going to do a literal translation. Here's the word that was written. Here's the word we understand in English, right? But his was pretty close to this, but I was doing that for Bruce's sake because Bruce is a huge fan of the Webster translation. All right, so when Babylon conquers Judah, and particularly Jerusalem, the people are going to be led away in chains, and a lot of them naked or nearly naked. Seems pretty cruel, doesn't it? But this was a common practice. The Assyrians did the same thing to Israel to a large extent. Why would they do that? It's to humiliate them, to break their spirit, right? If you feel absolutely humiliated in this situation, you're less likely to try to make a break for it, right? Or if you're naked, am I really going to take off and go running through the hillside looking for comfort from someone else? Today, if we saw somebody approaching like that, we'd probably lock the door, get the weapons out, and call the police. Right? Wasn't too different back then. If somebody came running up to your house naked, you probably weren't going to give them a lot of help. God here relays that Babylon will be the ones in chains in humility this time. While God's people would be powerless to exact their own vengeance, so the Israelites, those from Judah, aren't going to be the ones to exact the vengeance that God is talking about. They would not need to do so because God is going to arrange for that. Just like he's arranging for the Babylons to discipline them, he will take care of exacting vengeance on those Babylons. Deuteronomy 32:35 tells us, "Vengeance is mine and recompense, for the time when their foot shall slip, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and their doom comes swiftly. So again, God has always been in control of this. And he's pointing out to them, I'm going to take care of this. You don't need to worry about it. I will take care of this. Also points out that no one will escape the vengeance. So it's not like the Babylonian royalty will be spared of this. They're going to deal with it just like all of the individuals. Then the reason I brought the other scripture in, or the other translation in, is that I wanted to talk about, I will not meet thee as a man. The English Standard says, I will spare no one. Let's see. Yeah, so I will take vengeance, I will spare no one. The other translations, I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. So what I got from my studies was when God executes his judgments, the Babylonians aren't going to be able to bargain with him. They aren't going to be able to offer him a bribe to change his mind. So when it comes to mankind dealing with other nations, right? A lot of times, okay, I'm going to invade you and take you over. Well, maybe if I talk really sweet to you, or I offer, hey, I'll be subject to you. You just make this nice and easy. Don't hurt anybody, you know. Things like that happen, don't they? God's saying, you don't have any, there's no point in you even starting this Babylon. You're not going to bargain with me. You're not going to debate me. You're not going to bribe me. This is what's going to happen. You're not going to change my mind. That's an interesting statement. Have we ever seen God change his mind on something? I think of Abraham bargaining with God about, you know, if you find 50 people, how about 40, 30? He gets them down to 10. He does a pretty good job, and God is willing to listen. Now, I think we all know that God knew he wasn't going to find 10 righteous people. So he could have probably gone down to about 5 and still been safe being able to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. But he was willing to listen. He also was willing to listen to Moses when he said, the people went crazy while Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. And God tells Moses, I am so sorry I even created these people. I'm just going to wipe them out and start over. I'll find another group to be my chosen. And Moses convinces him not to do it. So God will relent at times, but here he's saying, Babylon, no point in you even asking. Not going to happen. Verse 4. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, is the Holy One of Israel. So this isn't really God talking through Isaiah. This is Isaiah can't help but, in this discussion be just in complete awe of who God is. And maybe even brag a little bit here, not out of his, not out of Isaiah being something special, but the idea of just how special and powerful our God is, right? So having God's plan revealed through him, Isaiah can't help but praise God for these plans, which are so much wiser and so much more reliable than the plans that man comes up with. It's not just, this message isn't just for the hearing of Judah, but for Babylon as well. Again, remember, these events won't happen for 200 years. When the captivity occurs, guess what? All of these writings that have occurred up to this time are going to go with them to Babylon. Do you think that Babylon leaves those things behind when they take the choice people with them? I think of like in the ages when Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego are taken. Don't you think that Babylon probably takes the things that are their scriptures? Just, they always had an interest in what the cultures they were taking over did, right? We know that Daniel, for instance, in his time will read Jeremiah and understand that the 70 years of captivity is nearly up. So obviously things made it from Jerusalem to captivity in Babylon. And I think there's a point to this. This is going to be among the things that make their way to Babylon and will be revealed to them. Isaiah is declaring to his future readers, the Lord God is our Redeemer, meaning his chosen people. He's our Redeemer. And his will can't be challenged. No one can withstand it. The Hebrew term translated as Redeemer is Gael, G-A-A-L, or G-O-E-L, depending on who's doing the translation. And it refers to a kinsman redeemer, someone who is blood, someone who is family. When I read of that, I think of Boaz, right? We have the wonderful story in Ruth of Boaz redeeming her because he is her kinsman. Technically, he's not her kinsman, but he's kinsman of the man she married. So he has the right to redeem her, and does. But God was a spiritual father and creator to all of the Jews. He is family. So he is this redeemer, this kinsman, right? He has the right to redeem them. We have an application for that for us today in that Christ is our brother. He can be our redeemer, that kinsman who is entitled to redeem us. A Gael or redeemer had to have the ability to redeem someone. So it's great, I might be your relation, but maybe I don't have the skills or the power or the wealth to do what needs to be done to redeem you. So a redeemer has to be able to do that. They might have power. Redeemers were called upon to execute bloody vengeance at times. Think of the right that the families had if someone murdered another person. They could go to one of the sanctuary cities and be judged at the sanctuary city, right? But if they were found to be guilty of murder, what was a family member entitled to do? Put them to death. That was the redeemer. The kinsman redeemer had the right to put that person to death. Do you think everybody could have done that? Of course not. They might not have had the strength. They might not have had the constitution to do that, right? You had to have someone who was capable of doing that. They might have to possess something of value. Maybe they need to pay a ransom. Well, if you have no material wealth, how would you pay a ransom? God possesses everything in the context of the events going on here, so he has all the wealth anyone could ever need to pay a ransom. There is, again, an application for us. As we look at our salvation, there was a dear cost for it, and that was Christ's blood. Christ had what was necessary to be our Redeemer. He had the power. He had the wealth, in this case not material wealth, but in something of great value that he was willing to give up to redeem us. So verse 5, they're told to sit in silence, go into darkness, O you daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called the mistress of kingdoms. Might sound kind of funny, but it's really a simple one to figure out. Isaiah returns to the application of how this is going to affect Babylon, back from his praise of God. Instead of basking in glory as they had been, will have the. So I got to keep in mind this is 200 years in the future. So I can't say basking in glory as they had done because it hasn't happened yet. So instead of basking in glory as they will have done, or to quote an episode of Big Bang Theory, will have had done, they're going to sit in silence. They're not going to be able to boast anymore. They're not giving the orders anymore. They're taking the orders. And guess what? A servant sits in silence and takes the orders. They'll hide themselves in darkness to cover their shame. Babylon will no longer be the mistress that other nations attempt to seek the favor of. They're not going to be the great power anymore. Others aren't going to be coming to them trying to seek their favor. Well, Michael, looks like I might have had more than 45 minutes here. Verse 6. God tells them, I was angry with my people. I profaned their heritage. I gave them into your hand, meaning you, Babylon, I'm going to give them into your hand. But you showed them no mercy, or you're going to show them no mercy in reality. And on the aged, you made your yoke exceedingly heavy. So here's one of those verses I said, well, why would God punish Babylon for doing what he wanted done? And here's one of the answers. So why did all this happen, meaning the subjugation of Judah to Babylon? He says because he was angry with them. This is not angry like you and I get angry at other people. This is righteous anger. They had a covenant with him and they failed to fulfill it. Not only that, they disrespected him. They had seen the things he'd done and they still weren't faithful to him. God uses the Babylonians to discipline these rebellious people. And it's important to note that this is discipline, not punishment. Two different terms for two different purposes. God's pointing out that he will give them into the hands of the Babylonian. That's his plan. Reason one for Babylonian punishment. They had wrongly believed that they had conquered Judah because they were this great power, when in reality it's because God was using them. We have previous examples of God defeating great armies who came up against Jerusalem. As they camped about the city, God sent an angel through, and 200,000 troops of the enemy killed one another without a single Israelite soldier having any hand in it. God doesn't even need an army to defeat these opposing armies. His point is, you didn't take Judah because you were greater than them. You're going to take Judah because I let you. Big difference. Reason two, when Babylon does conquer Judah, they will not be merciful. And while we've probably all met bad losers, the Babylonians here are bad winners. Right? They're cruel to the people. They humiliate them. They treat them badly, and they put great burdens upon them as their servants. And then reason three, it's bad enough you treat the young people who are capable maybe of enduring the hard labor you're going to assign them, but they made the elderly do this as well. And they didn't give them any less work to do. They gave them the same amount of work. Cruelty upon cruelty. So there's work you might give, say, Michael to do, but you better not expect that you're going to give it to me to do and it get done, right? I just don't have the strength, energy, and stamina I did when I was Michael's age. 7 and 8, he says, you said I will be a mistress forever, so that you don't lay these things to heart or remember their end. You hear this, you lover of pleasures, who sit securely. You say that I am, and there is no one besides me. So Proverbs 18 teaches us pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before the fall. These are going to be the embodiment of that warning, right? You think you're so great, the fall is going to be great for you. Babylon will become overconfident in its own abilities and securities. She'll come to think of herself as untouchable by those around her, wherein every champion. So, if you have any sport, activity, anything where there's a champion, they're only the champion until the next champion comes along, right? And Babylon's going to meet a new champion. I wanted to touch on the phrase, I am here. So I can't tell you that I found a definitive answer, but I did go back to the Latin Vulgate to see that the term used here for I am, how does it compare to the term used in Genesis when God tells Moses who he is? Remember, he says, I am who I am. Turns out it's the same term here. Surprised me a little bit. I'll probably butcher this, but it looks like ego sum is the terms that translate as I am. And it's found in both places. So when God says, I am who I am, ego sum, ego sum. When it says, you say I am, It says ego sum. So I wonder, can't tell you definitively again, I wonder, does Babylon consider them at a level with themselves at a level with God? That they say, I'm at this same level too, right? And they say there's nobody but us in terms of there's no competition. If you're God, that's a pretty good reason to exact some vengeance, that people are that disrespectful to you. Verse 9, he tells them these things, these losses that are going to occur. So they thought, I'm never going to be a widow, so I'm not going to lose my husband. I'll never be childless. And he says those two things that you thought could never happen, they're both going to happen to you, and in a really short period of time. This is all going to happen when the Medes and Persians overcome them in one day. So we're not talking about a long, drawn-out battle. In one night, they are defeated by the Medes, and many Babylonians are killed. The rulers of the Babylon are going to place great stock in the ability of their seers to alert them to impending attacks so they can prepare for them. God's giving them 200 years notice here, and they still don't get it. So I don't think a seer is going to make much difference. It says, you felt secure in your weakness. You said, no one sees me. Do you know anybody like that? And that does things because they think nobody sees I do those things. Maybe in a public setting they seem very upright, but the things that they do and what they think are secret are very different. God's aware of all of those things. He's not fooled. And what he's warning is you're going to reach the point where these sinful behaviors don't even prick your heart or your conscience anymore. You don't think anything of them. That's one of Satan's effective tools. Tries to convince people to commit sin, and that committing sin and suffering in no way, suffering no consequences as a result, or at least none that they can see. And that emboldens them to commit larger sins. Go a little deeper. Well, I got away with that. Can I get away with this? It's one of Satan's tools, right? God says they'll trust in their magicians and sorcerers, meaning worldly wisdom. Those things never stand up to God's wisdom. And the I am idea here is repeated. Babylon will seem to think that they have no rivals. We can actually say that we have no rivals today, but that's when we trust on the true I am, and not because of ourselves, right? Romans 8:31 tells us, what shall we say then to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? So that idea is we're unconquerable. That doesn't mean we won't suffer things. That doesn't mean Satan won't come after us. But that God enables us to withstand anything that we face in this world because we know there's something better ahead. Verses 11 and 12, he goes on to tell them evil's going to come upon them. You're not going to know how to charm it away. Disaster's going to come upon you. You won't know how to make up for it. Ruin's going to come upon you, and it's going to be really quick and sudden. Then it seems like there's a little mocking here. Well, stand firm on those enchantments and sorcerers and magicians you trust in. Go right ahead. Let that be your defense. That just makes it easier for me, because you're foolish. I did have a note here. Let's see. Babylon's magicians will be powerless to stop what's going to happen or even warn of it. Interestingly, they get one final really obvious opportunity that's recorded in Daniel 5. We have the events where the hand appears and writes on the wall, right? And it's actually the warning that the time has come. Your destruction is at hand is the essence of the message. But they can't read it. They don't know what it means. Who do they have to get to read it? Daniel. This Jewish person they captured in conquest, he's the only one who can figure out what it means. He gives the meaning, but that doesn't even help them because they're not wise enough to prepare for the attack of the Medes. 13 and 14. We may get there after all. It says, you're wearied by your many counsels. Let them come forth and save you, or stand forth and save you. Those who divide the heavens and gaze at the stars. So these are, the people who read the stars to tell them what's going to happen, right? Behold, they are like stubble, the fire consumes them. They can't even deliver themselves in this instance, let alone you as a nation. And he says it's not as if it's a piece of coal for warming oneself, this fire that's coming. It's not like sitting around a campfire. So there'll be many counselors who claim to have powers of different types and coming from different sources. And when there are so many, they're not going to agree. So you get tired of hearing all these different opinions. Well, they can't all be right. Who do you listen to? So they start ignoring them. And because they don't want to put the effort in to determine who's right and who's wrong, nobody who has anything to say gets listened to. Maybe the astrologers could tell Belshazzar, I see a Taurus in your future, looking up at the stars, or maybe a Gemini or a Pisces. But gee, that's not a good sign match for you. You don't want to get her, right? Sorry, that was my joke on modern day astrology. Verse 14 points out that they won't be able to save themselves, let alone the nation. And a fire is coming to Babylon that will consume them. This isn't a fire that warms them, isn't a fireplace, isn't a campfire. It's an all-consuming fire that's going to tear them apart. Lastly, verse 15, such to you are those with whom you have labored, who have done business with you from your youth. They wander about, each in his own direction. There is no one to save you. I find the particular wording of this verse a little challenging. That's okay. The meaning's not so challenging. In their time of trouble, the idea here is Babylon may look to those bordering nations that have tried to work out arrangements with them, right, to be friends, let's say, partners. But they're going to find no allies. So when the Medes come up against them, everybody they think is their friend is just going to vanish. They take a step back. Do you ever see the part about, the guys in the military standing in line and they say, who wants to volunteer, take one step forward? Well, nobody steps forward, but one guy takes one step back. So he looks like he stepped forward, right? That's what I think of when I read this. They're all going to take that step back like, oh, no, we're not their friends, Medes. You go right ahead. Let you have them. Because we'll just form an alliance with you once you're in charge. So that should be a lesson to us, too. If our relationships with other people are superficial and we only engage with them in them because of what we can get out of them, we can't expect those people to rush to our aid when we need their support. They're only going to be engaged with us for what they can get out of that relationship. So we need to take the time to develop personal relationships with people, to care about, not just ask them, how's your day, but care what the answer is, okay? I can't tell you how many people I pass in the hall at work say, oh, how you doing? And they're on a dead, fast walk. They don't really want to hear the answer. It's just a nicety to say as you pass somebody. Be that person who cares what the answer is, so that when they're in times of trouble and need your support, you know it. And when you're in times of trouble and need their support, they know it. That's everything I had for today. So we did finish with almost 30 seconds to spare. Does anybody have any questions or comments that we can get in that time?
Hey, Kurt, I just kind of keep going back to, I think, the greatest commandment and the second. Jesus tells the lawyer, this chapter probably wouldn't even been written. I think those two, the greatest commandment, love the Lord, God, all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and the second, treat your neighbor as yourself.
Sure. So Tom's asking about, when Jesus is asked about what's the greatest commandment, and he responds, the first is about loving God with all your being. But he doesn't stop there, and he says the second's like the first, love your neighbor as yourself. So that's kind of that same concept, right? We need to reach out to the people around us if God is going to be pleased with us, it's because we're serving other people. And that fulfills that second idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. Right? Thanks, Tom. Is that where you were going with that? Okay. All right. Thank you all.